"You're embarrassing me in front of my real family." Those were the exact words my daughter Sophia Carter whispered to me at her glamorous engagement party in Beverly Hills. More than 200 guests froze champagne glasses, paused midair, as the sentence cut through the crystal-lit ballroom like a blade. In that single moment, what should have been a celebration of love turned into the opening act of a family drama so raw, so shocking, that it left the entire room gasping. I stood there in my polished Red Wing boots, the same pair I've worn to construction sites for decades, while Sophia, my only child, looked at me as if I were nothing more than an intruder at her new life. She had just inherited $33 million from her late mother's side of the family, and overnight she decided that her construction worker father no longer fit the polished picture she wanted to paint for Beverly Hills high society. But what Sophia didn't know, what nobody in that ballroom knew, was that I'd been hiding the truth for 25 years. Behind the calloused hands and the modest truck parked outside, I carried a secret powerful enough to shatter her world. And that night, under chandeliers worth more than most houses, she was about to violate an inheritance clause so ironclad that her entire fortune could disappear in less than 72 hours. If you're watching this, don't scroll away. This isn't just another Beverly Hills Country Club gossip story. This is about betrayal, about how the line between hidden wealth and respect versus money can rip families apart. It's about a father who stayed silent for decades, only to reveal a truth so explosive that it became a viral billionaire reveal story, whispered in every corner of Los Angeles. Sophia had been drifting away from me for years. At her wedding 3 years ago, she sat me with the catering staff instead of the family table. Last Christmas, she apologized to her fiancé's parents for the roughness of my hands as I passed the wine. Every interaction chipped away at the bond we once shared, until finally, on the most important night of her life, she decided to humiliate me in front of everyone she wanted to impress. Imagine this: a father who raised his daughter alone after losing his wife, who taught her to ride a bike, who held her hand through every scraped knee and late-night homework session, reduced to nothing more than a liability in the eyes of the very child he sacrificed everything for. That was me. And the pain of that betrayal wasn't just personal. It triggered a legal chain reaction written into her inheritance papers years before she was even old enough to understand what money could do to people. So when Sophia leaned closer and hissed those words, "You're not part of my real family," she had no idea she was also signing the death warrant for her $33 million empire. What came next was a revenge story the entire city would never forget. For most fathers, betrayal doesn't arrive in a single explosion. It doesn't roar into the room with fireworks and chaos. Instead, it creeps in slowly like cracks, spreading across concrete until one day the foundation you thought was unshakable begins to crumble beneath your feet. With my daughter Sophia, that betrayal took years to unfold, and every moment of it was tied to the one thing I thought would never matter between us: what I did for a living. I still remember her wedding 3 years ago. Most fathers dream of walking their daughters down the aisle and being honored at the family table. Me, I was seated with the catering staff, not because there wasn't space, not because of a mistake. No, Sophia deliberately placed me there. When I asked her why, she smiled thinly and said, "Dad, you'll be more comfortable with people who understand your situation." My situation. That's how she described my life as a construction foreman. The years of leading crews pouring concrete in 100-degree heat, building bridges that carried millions of people to work every day. That was my situation. That was the first real cut, the first sign that the bond between us was starting to rot. It only got worse. Last Christmas, at her fiancé Andrew Sinclair's family dinner, I passed the wine across the table. My hands are rough from decades of work, scarred by steel beams and weathered by sun and rain. To me, those hands are proof of my life's effort, but to Sophia, they were an embarrassment. She laughed nervously and apologized to Andrew's parents, saying Dad's hands are like this because he spent his whole life with concrete. She thought she was being charming, but the look in her eyes told me the truth. She wasn't explaining. She was excusing me the way you excuse someone who doesn't belong. And then came the lunch at the Beverly Hills Country Club. I thought maybe it was an olive branch, a chance to repair what had been broken between us. Instead, it was the moment the knife sank deepest. She slid a business card across the table like it was a gift. I picked it up and read Sarah Mitchell, image consultant to Beverly Hills Elite. $500 per session. My stomach turned. I asked her, "What exactly are you asking me to do, Sophia?" She didn't look me in the eye. She never did anymore. "I'm asking you to get some help, Dad. Learn how to dress appropriately. Maybe take a class on social etiquette. You could even say you're retired instead of what you actually do." That last line burned hotter than any sun I've ever worked under. Say you're retired instead of what you actually do. She wanted me to erase myself, to scrub away the very identity that had fed her, clothed her, and carried her through life. Sophia wasn't just ashamed of my job, she was ashamed of me. I handed the card back to her. My voice was steady, but my heart was breaking. "I'm proud of what I do." She didn't hesitate. "Well, I'm not." No hesitation, no apology, just raw contempt delivered like a verdict. That was the moment I realized my daughter wasn't just embarrassed by me, she had fully decided that I was beneath her. From then on, it was clear she was building a new world for herself, one where I had no place. She joined the Beverly Hills Country Club, paying a $50,000 membership fee just for the privilege of networking with what she called her kind of people. She began hosting dinners where I wasn't invited, surrounding herself with old money families like the Whitmans, who treated me like a novelty when we crossed paths. Sophia wasn't just distancing herself from me, she was rewriting her story, and in that story I wasn't the father who raised her alone after her mother Laura died. I wasn't the man who worked 3 jobs to keep her in school. I was just a blue-collar embarrassment she needed to hide from the narrative of her glittering new life. And yet, even with all those slights, all those humiliations, I kept trying. I showed up. I pressed my best shirts, polished my boots, and hoped that somewhere inside her, the girl I raised was still there. But every time she proved me wrong. Every laugh at my expense, every apology she made for me, every way she distanced herself, all of it built toward one undeniable truth. My daughter valued status over family money, over loyalty, image over love. The betrayal wasn't just about me, it was about her mother's legacy too. Laura Carter, my late wife, left behind more than money. She left behind values, hard work, honesty, dignity. Sophia inherited the fortune, but she discarded the values. That's what cut the deepest. Watching the woman my wife and I raised together turn her back not only on me, but on everything Laura believed in. By the time the engagement party rolled around, the pattern was unbreakable. Sophia's contempt had become the air she breathed. And when she looked me in the eye that night and told me, "Dad, you'll never belong in my world," I realized she wasn't just rejecting me. She was rejecting the very foundation of her inheritance. She was tearing apart the fragile bridge between us, brick by brick, until nothing was left. And that was fine, because what Sophia didn't know was that I'd been documenting every slight, every insult, every betrayal. She thought she was climbing into a world of power and respect, but she had no idea that her entire empire rested on a clause she'd been violating for years. And when the time came, that clause would bring her whole Beverly Hills lifestyle crashing down. This wasn't just a father-daughter conflict. This was a ticking time bomb in the middle of a family drama that would soon become a viral revenge story, and Sophia had lit the fuse herself. If betrayal was the wound, then the Whitman family was the salt Sophia rubbed into it. When she invited me to dinner with them at the Beverly Hills Country Club, I thought foolishly that maybe she wanted to make peace. I imagined a long table introductions, perhaps a toast to family. Instead, what I walked into was a performance staged carefully under chandeliers and polished marble. Where my role wasn't father, it was prop. The Whitmans were exactly the kind of family Sophia had been chasing. Richard Whitman, silver-haired and sharp-suited, ran a private equity firm worth nearly $1 billion. His wife Caroline chaired charity boards and had her name printed in glossy society magazines. Their son Ethan had just graduated Harvard Business School, a golden boy groomed to inherit his father's empire. To Sophia, aligning herself with them was like winning the social lottery. To me, it was a test. Would my daughter stand by me as her father, or would she use me as a pawn to climb higher? From the moment we entered the dining hall, I had my answer. Sophia's grip on my arm was tight, not affectionate but controlling, like she was steering me where she wanted. Her voice was sugar-coated, high-pitched in a way she never used at home. "Daddy, I want you to meet the Whitmans," she sang, drawing out the word daddy like a sweet accessory she could pull from her purse. For the first time in my life, I realized she wasn't introducing me as her father. She was presenting me as her talking point. Richard's handshake was firm but calculated. Caroline's smile was wide but empty, her eyes already scanning me up and down, like an item on display. Ethan's nod was polite, though the kind of politeness that carried no weight at all. They didn't see me as a person. They saw me as a detail, an ingredient in the recipe of Sophia's new identity. Sophia spoke quickly, filling the silence before I could. "Dad works in development," she announced, clipping the words sharply as though construction foreman was too heavy to land in their world. Richard raised an eyebrow, curious. "Development, commercial, residential." I opened my mouth, ready to tell the truth, but Sophia jumped in like she was protecting a secret. "Large-scale projects," she said, her smile stiff. "Very complex, lots of moving parts." Technically not a lie, but far from the truth. In that moment, I realized my daughter was using me like a resume bullet point, trimming the edges, polishing the language, until the father who raised her no longer resembled the man I was. Dinner was a blur of conversation I wasn't meant to participate in. Richard discussed capital markets. Caroline detailed charity galas. Ethan boasted about international investments. Sophia laughed at all the right moments, nodded eagerly, and every so often placed her hand lightly on my shoulder as if to say, "See, he's part of my life too." But her eyes told a different story. They were pleading with me not to speak, not to reveal anything that would puncture the polished image she was crafting. At one point, Caroline leaned in and said, "Sophia, it's wonderful how supportive your family is. It must be comforting to know your father understands this world." Sophia smiled tightly, but her nails dug into her napkin. She didn't correct Caroline. She didn't say that I'd never set foot in this world until tonight. She let the lie hang in the air, feeding it with silence. The worst part wasn't the Whitmans themselves. They were exactly what I expected, aloof, performative, interested only in what could benefit them. The worst part was my daughter's role in it all. She was playing along, pretending to cherish me, when in reality she was ashamed, desperate to mold me into someone I wasn't. Every pat on my arm, every smile in my direction was as hollow as the champagne glasses clinking around us. When the dessert arrived, Richard raised his glass. To new alliances, he toasted, his eyes landing on Sophia. She beamed, basking in the glow of belonging. And me, I sat there, a construction foreman, being paraded as a developer, my own daughter nodding along as though my identity were just another mask to be adjusted for the evening. Driving home that night, the truth settled heavy in my chest. Sophia didn't invite me to dinner to honor me. She invited me to dinner to use me, to prop up her credibility, to prove to the Whitmans that she had a respectable background, to pass me off as something I wasn't. She didn't need a father. She needed a pawn. And sitting behind the wheel of my old truck, I realized something that chilled me more than anything else. Sophia wasn't just betraying me in public. She was rehearsing for a bigger stage, a larger audience, where my role as her father would be rewritten entirely. That night I understood that the girl I once held on my shoulders, the girl who used to beg me not to leave for work in the mornings, was gone. In her place stood a woman who would smile sweetly at me in public while erasing me behind the scenes. This wasn't just a family drama anymore. This was a father-daughter conflict dressed up in designer clothes staged under Beverly Hills chandeliers. And I knew sooner or later the performance would collapse. Because no matter how carefully Sophia played the part, truth has a way of breaking through the act. People often think betrayal only stings in the moment it happens. But for me, the pain came in waves. Waves of memory I couldn't stop from crashing over me. Every time Sophia looked at me with those cold, dismissive eyes, I couldn't help but see another version of her. A little girl with scraped knees and a toothy grin, a child who once thought I was the center of her world. It's one thing to be rejected by society. It's another to be rejected by your own flesh and blood. After Laura, my wife, passed away, the house felt unbearably empty. I remember the silence most of all, the kind of silence that makes you want to turn on the TV just to drown out the grief. Sophia was only 10 then, too young to fully understand, too old to escape the weight of loss. She would crawl into my bed at night, clutching her stuffed rabbit, whispering, "Daddy, when is Mommy coming back?" And I would lie there staring at the ceiling, knowing there was no answer I could give that would take away her pain. So instead I told her, "Mommy's watching over us. She's proud of you. She'll always be with us." From that moment forward, it was just us, father and daughter against the world. I worked long hours, sometimes 3 jobs, but I always came home to help her with homework, pack her lunches, or cheer at her soccer games. We didn't have much, but we had each other. Back then, Sophia used to look at me like I was her hero, and maybe for a while I believed I was. I can still picture her first bike ride. She was wobbly, terrified of falling. My hand was on the back of the seat, steadying her running alongside until she found her balance. When she pedaled away on her own, she turned around, her eyes wide with pride, and shouted, "I did it, Daddy! I did it!" That memory is carved into me, a reminder of who she used to be before money, image, and status replaced gratitude and love. The shift was slow, almost invisible at first. Teenagers pull away. I told myself that was normal. But after Laura's inheritance surfaced and the lawyers explained the trust, everything changed. Sophia started comparing our life to others, to her friends, with luxury cars, designer clothes, vacations abroad. Suddenly, our modest house, my old truck, and my calloused hands weren't enough. They weren't just background details. They became reasons for her to be ashamed. What hurts the most is how often I still think about the small, tender moments no one else saw. Like the time she fell asleep on my shoulder during a 4th of July fireworks show. Or the afternoons we spent at the park feeding ducks and laughing as if the whole world was just us two. Those memories are mine alone now, because when Sophia looks at me, she doesn't see that father. She sees someone who doesn't fit her new Beverly Hills lifestyle. I replay our conversations in my head. The way she whispered, "Dad, maybe don't mention you're a foreman. Just say you're in development." Or the cold sting of her words at the country club. "Well, I'm not proud of what you do." Every insult was a betrayal, not only of me, but of the little girl I once tucked into bed with bedtime stories and peanut butter sandwiches waiting for her in the morning. What she doesn't realize is that I never cared about money. I cared about her. I never needed to be respected by Beverly Hills. I only needed to be respected by my daughter. And instead of respect, I got disdain. Instead of gratitude, I got humiliation. That's the real inheritance scandal in this family drama. Not the millions of dollars, but the love that was squandered for the sake of appearances. Sometimes late at night, I walk through the quiet house and still hear Laura's voice. She warned me once gently that money could change people if they weren't careful. "Daniel," she said, "promise me you'll raise Sophia to value people over possessions, character over wealth." I thought I had. I thought I'd done enough. But now, watching Sophia treat me as a liability, I feel like I failed not just as a father, but as a husband carrying on Laura's wishes. The worst part, I still love her. That love is stubborn, unyielding, even as she tramples on it. Love doesn't just evaporate even when respect does. That's why the pain cuts so deep, because if she were a stranger, I could walk away. But she's not. She's my daughter. And the very child I once carried on my shoulders now looks down on me, as though I'm the weight holding her back. The inner conflict nearly tore me apart. Part of me wanted to shout the truth that the hidden wealth she thought elevated her life was built on conditions she was violating every day. That the father-daughter conflict she kept fueling wasn't just personal, it was legal, and it could strip her of everything she thought she owned. But another part of me wanted to stay silent to protect her, to believe that maybe, just maybe, she would find her way back to the girl who once believed her dad could do anything. Every time I walked into a room with her, I carried 2 images in my head: the proud little girl on her bike shouting, "I did it," and the polished woman in a $12,000 dress whispering, "You embarrassed me." The contrast was unbearable. It was as if I'd lost her twice, once to death, when Laura passed, and once to pride, when Sophia turned her back on me. That is the cruelest betrayal of all. Not the rejection itself, but the memories it poisons. Silence can be a weapon if you know how to use it. For years, I let Sophia think I was just a humble foreman, easy to dismiss, easy to mock. What she never realized was that every slight, every insult, every public humiliation was being recorded, documented, filed away like bricks in the foundation of a wall I was quietly building. I wasn't planning revenge out of hatred. I was planning consequences out of principle. It started small. The first time she seated me with the catering staff at her wedding, I saved the text exchange where she justified it. When she told her friends in a group chat that I didn't understand sophisticated people, I screenshotted the message. At the country club lunch, when she handed me that business card for the image consultant and whispered, "Say you're retired instead of what you actually do," I pressed record on my phone. I didn't know then how all of it would be used, but I knew one thing: my daughter was crossing lines her inheritance contract would never forgive. Laura's grandmother, Elizabeth Morrison, had drafted that will with laser precision. I remembered the day the lawyers first explained it. The trust wasn't just money, it was responsibility. The language was clear: beneficiaries must maintain respectful and supportive relationships with all surviving family members. Section 12, Clause 4 was sharper still. Any public humiliation or rejection of a family member could trigger immediate forfeiture. At the time, Sophia had nodded impatiently, barely listening, already dreaming of what $33 million could buy. But I listened. I memorized every word, and I knew deep down that someday those words would matter. By the time Sophia's engagement rolled around, I had 5 years of evidence stacked like kindling, waiting for a spark. That's when I remembered a business card I'd kept in my wallet since Laura's funeral. Catherine Blake, the family attorney. At the time, she had pulled me aside, pressed the card into my hand, and said, "Daniel, if you ever need anything, call me. Laura always trusted you. I do too." For 6 years, I carried that card without dialing the number. After the lunch at the country club, I finally made the call. "Ms. Blake, this is Daniel Carter. I think we need to talk about my daughter." The next day, I sat across from her in a glass-walled office downtown, the Los Angeles skyline stretching behind her. Catherine was composed, sharp-eyed, the kind of lawyer who measured every word. She listened as I laid out the timeline, slid over the stack of documents, texts, photos, audio files, even event programs, with my name conspicuously absent. When I finished, she leaned back in her chair, fingers steepled. "Daniel, I need to ask you something. Do you want to go through with this? Because once we open a review, there's no going back. If the committee rules against her, she loses everything." I thought of Sophia at 5 years old, proudly holding up a spelling test with a gold star. I thought of her crying into my shirt the night Laura died. And then I thought of her standing at the country club table saying, "I'm not proud of what you do." I looked Catherine in the eye and said, "I don't want her money. I never did. But I won't let her keep humiliating me as if I don't matter. If the inheritance means respect, then she's already forfeited it." Catherine nodded once. "Then we proceed." The process was clinical, almost cold. Catherine prepared the filing, compiling every insult into a legal narrative. She explained how the committee worked: 3 attorneys, 2 family advisors, and 1 independent mediator. They didn't care about emotion. They cared about evidence. And I had more than enough. Sophia had been writing her own downfall for years. I was just the one holding the pen. Still, Catherine was fair. "Daniel, she'll have one last chance. If she acknowledges you publicly, if she shows respect within 72 hours of notification, the committee may forgive past behavior. This isn't about stripping her of money. It's about forcing her to choose family over pride." That was the safeguard Elizabeth Morrison had built into the will. A chance for redemption before judgment. And as much as part of me wanted Sophia to face the full weight of her choices, another part of me still hoped she might take that chance. Because beneath all the betrayal, she was still my daughter. I walked out of Catherine's office that day with 2 things: a folder of legal documents and a decision. I would no longer beg Sophia for respect. I would test whether she valued me enough to keep her fortune. If she passed, maybe we could rebuild something. If she failed, then the truth would strip away her illusions, leaving her with nothing but herself. What I didn't know was how spectacularly she would fail. Because when you hand someone like Sophia a stage, they don't see it as an opportunity to reconcile. They see it as a spotlight. And when the spotlight hit her at the engagement party, she chose performance over love, pride over family money, over dignity. And in that moment, everything Catherine and I had prepared came to life. The investigation wasn't just paperwork anymore. It was a guillotine, and Sophia was the one pulling her own rope. This wasn't just an inheritance scandal. This was a revenge story written in legal ink, a family drama that would end not with my anger, but with her own arrogance. The night of the engagement party shimmered with the kind of extravagance only Beverly Hills can muster. Crystal chandeliers glowed like captured stars, the air heavy with champagne bubbles and polite laughter. 200 guests mingled, each one measuring status by the cut of a suit or the sparkle of a necklace. And in the middle of it all was Sophia, my daughter, wearing a $12,000 gown and a smile so rehearsed it could have been scripted. To everyone else, it was a celebration. To me, it was the night truth would break through the glass veneer of her new world. I knew the confrontation was coming, but I didn't know when. My role, I decided, was to stand still and let her reveal herself. That moment came when she guided me onto the terrace away from the ballroom's glow. Out there, under the softer light of hanging lanterns and the hum of Beverly Hills traffic in the distance, she delivered the words that sliced deeper than any insult before. "Dad, you'll never belong in my world. You embarrass me. You always will." The silence after her words was louder than any argument. A few guests had followed us out, curious about the tension. I felt their eyes pressing against my back. Sophia didn't care. She raised her voice, almost proud of her rejection. "From now on, you're not part of my life. Not my home, not my events, not my social circle. I'm done apologizing for you." In that instant, she didn't just reject me. She rejected the very inheritance that demanded respect for surviving family. I should have been devastated, but all I felt was clarity. This was the proof Catherine Blake had warned me about. The final act of disrespect performed in public, undeniable and irreversible. Then the sound that changed everything, a man clearing his throat, cutting through the tension. Jonathan Hale, a developer I'd known professionally for years, stepped forward from the cluster of guests. He looked from Sophia to me, his face hard with disbelief. "Sophia, I think you should know something about your father." Sophia rolled her eyes, dismissive. "Jonathan, please, this is between me and him." But Jonathan's voice rose above the whispers spreading across the terrace. "Ladies and gentlemen, forgive the interruption, but I can't stand here and watch this lie any longer. You think Daniel Carter is just a construction foreman? You're wrong. This man is Daniel Cole, the founder and CEO of Cole Infrastructure Group, one of the most respected builders in the country, a man whose company has shaped half the skyline of Los Angeles." The terrace went still. The clinking of glasses inside the ballroom seemed to pause. Every eye swung toward me. Sophia's painted smile froze, then cracked. She shook her head as if Jonathan had told a joke in poor taste. "That's ridiculous. My father, a billionaire. No, he drives an old truck. He lives in a modest house. He wears boots to formal events." Jonathan didn't flinch. "Exactly, because he never needed to prove anything to anyone. But let's be clear, the man you just humiliated is worth more than your entire inheritance 30 times over. Forbes listed him last year as one of America's quiet billionaires. And Sophia, the building you're standing in tonight, Cole Infrastructure built it." A murmur rolled through the crowd like a wave. Heads turned, eyes widened. Caroline Whitman's hand flew to her mouth. Richard Whitman's jaw tightened, already calculating what this revelation meant. Ethan shifted uncomfortably, sensing the sudden collapse of the social advantage they thought they held. Sophia staggered, gripping the railing as if the world tilted beneath her. "Dad, is this true?" Her voice was small now, nothing like the cutting confidence she had moments before. I looked at her, my heart heavy with everything unspoken. "Every word, Sophia." The whispers became a chorus: billionaire reveal, hidden wealth, inheritance scandal. Guests who had ignored me minutes earlier now stared as if seeing me for the first time. Sophia's empire of appearances, the Beverly Hills lifestyle she had built on disdain for me, was collapsing in front of 200 witnesses. The irony was brutal. She spent years ashamed of my modest truck, my calloused hands, my simple life, only to learn that behind all of it was more wealth and power than she ever dreamed. And now, because she couldn't show respect, she stood to lose everything. Catherine Blake chose that moment to step onto the terrace, briefcase in hand. Her presence was like the strike of a gavel. "Sophia, I'm here on behalf of the Inheritance Committee. Given your public statements tonight, we will proceed with forfeiture review." Sophia's face drained of color. "No. Wait. I didn't mean." But Catherine's tone was firm. The terms were clear. "Maintain respect. You chose otherwise. And you did it in public in front of witnesses." The guests parted silently as Catherine walked toward me, placing the papers in my hand. The spotlight, once centered on Sophia's sparkling gown, now illuminated her downfall. I turned to her one last time. "Sophia, respect isn't inherited. It's earned. And tonight you showed the world exactly what you value." Her lips parted, searching for words, but none came. The terrace was silent, save for the hum of the city below. Beverly Hills had just witnessed the collapse of an image, the destruction of a lie, and the beginning of a story that would ripple far beyond the ballroom walls. This wasn't just a father-daughter conflict anymore. It was a family drama turned into a public reckoning, a revenge story, written not by me but by her own arrogance. The days after the engagement party felt like an earthquake, aftermath, quiet at first, but every aftershock revealed more destruction. The whispers that began on the terrace spread through Beverly Hills faster than wildfire. By Monday morning, it wasn't just gossip, it was headlines. Billionaire reveal heiress loses $33 million in inheritance scandal. My daughter's fall from grace had become a public spectacle, and there was nothing she could do to stop it. I sat in Catherine Blake's office that morning as the inheritance committee convened. 6 people sat around a polished mahogany table, reviewing the evidence I'd collected over the years, and the performance Sophia had given at the party. It didn't take long. Unanimous decision, Sophia Carter violated the respect clauses. Full forfeiture of all assets. $33 million gone in an instant. When Catherine slid the paperwork toward me, her voice was calm but firm. Daniel is the surviving family member. The funds revert to you if you choose to accept them. I looked down at the number on the page. $33 million. A sum that could buy penthouses, cars, yachts. A sum people would kill for. But to me, it felt poisoned. That money had destroyed the relationship between me and my daughter. It had turned love into leverage, family into theater. I pushed the paper back. No. Let it go to the charitable trust, to children who need it more than either of us. Catherine raised an eyebrow, but nodded. Elizabeth Morrison anticipated this. The fallback clause directs forfeited funds to children's charities. By Friday, the money will be distributed as 43 scholarships for underprivileged kids across the country. That thought brought me more peace than any dollar amount ever could. Sophia's arrogance would now fund opportunities for children who would value every penny. Her loss became their future. Meanwhile, the consequences for Sophia came swiftly and brutally. By Wednesday, her Bentley was repossessed while she lunched with Caroline Whitman. The repossession team waited politely outside the restaurant, then handed her the paperwork in front of a dozen society women. By Thursday, the Beverly Hills penthouse was locked down, foreclosure papers taped to the door. Her country club membership was revoked for non-payment. Credit cards froze, designer accounts closed. The glamorous Beverly Hills lifestyle she flaunted online evaporated in less than a week. And then came the most personal blow. Andrew Sinclair, her fiancé, called off the engagement. He phoned me first as if I could somehow soften the news. Mr. Carter, or Mr. Cole, I don't know what to call you anymore. I just can't move forward with Sophia. This isn't the life I signed up for. His voice was apologetic, but his decision was firm. Sophia's carefully constructed world collapsed piece by piece. Fortune, home, reputation, love. I'd like to say I took satisfaction in watching it unfold, that this was my revenge story fulfilled. But the truth is more complicated. Every headline, every whisper in the Beverly Hills Country Club, every time I heard father-daughter conflict attached to our names, it hurt. Because beneath the chaos was a simple reality: I never wanted her money. I only wanted her respect. Sophia, on the other hand, faced her new reality like someone waking from a dream to find themselves in a nightmare. She called my office dozens of times. She left voicemails, some angry, some pleading. Dad, please, they got it wrong. Dad, I didn't mean it. Dad, I can't live like this. Each time I listened in silence, the memories of her rejection still raw. Respect isn't bought back with desperation. It's earned with truth. The community that once welcomed her shut its doors. Invitations dried up. Social media turned cruel. The same followers who once envied her Beverly Hills lifestyle now mocked her downfall with hashtags Chakshud inheritance scandal, Chakshud billionaire, reveal, Chakshud respect V's money. The internet has no mercy, and Sophia learned that lesson the hardest way possible. And me, I drove my old truck to the same modest house, boots on my feet, calloused hands, still carrying the weight of honest work. The difference was now everyone knew the truth. Hidden wealth was no longer hidden. People looked at me differently, with respect, curiosity, sometimes even fear. But none of it mattered, because the one person whose respect I wanted had already thrown it away. I watched Sophia's life unravel, not with triumph, but with sorrow. She had been given everything: love, family, inheritance, and she chose image over integrity. Now she had nothing. And as much as I wanted to reach out, I knew I couldn't rescue her this time. This wasn't about saving her from poverty. This was about letting her face the consequences she'd earned. So $33 million moved into charity accounts funding futures for children Sophia would never meet. The world whispered about the heiress who lost everything and the father who refused to take the money back. But I didn't care about the whispers. I cared about the silence in my house, the silence where Sophia's laughter used to be. That was the true cost of this family drama. Not the money, not the scandal, but the love that was broken, the bond that was lost, and no trust fund in the world could ever buy it back. When the dust finally settled, Sophia was left with nothing but herself. The penthouse was gone. The Bentley repossessed, the invitations to charity galas and rooftop dinners evaporated. The Beverly Hills lifestyle she clung to had dissolved into bankruptcy papers and whispered mockery. And for the first time in years, she had to face what it meant to simply be Sophia, no fortune, no fiancé, no safety net. I didn't expect her to survive the fall. I thought she would crumble, cling to bitterness, blame me or the committee or anyone else. But slowly I began to see something I never thought I'd see again: effort. The first cracks in her pride were also the first signs of her redemption. At first it was small. I heard through Catherine Blake that Sophia had moved into a shared apartment in Burbank, splitting rent with a teacher's assistant. She didn't have drivers or stylists anymore. She took the bus, stood in line at grocery stores, clipped coupons from the Sunday paper. For someone who once spent more in a handbag than most families spend on food in a month, it was a crash course in humility. Then came the work. She applied for jobs, not glamorous ones, not society-approved ones. A nonprofit finally hired her as an administrative assistant, starting salary barely enough to cover rent and utilities. The same Sophia who once sneered at my calloused hands now had ink-stained fingers from filing paperwork, sweat on her back, from hauling boxes, circles under her eyes, from staying late to help colleagues. I didn't call her, I didn't congratulate her, but I paid attention. Because for once she wasn't talking about change. She was living it. Her apologies came, but not in the form of voicemails or tearful pleas. They came in action. I learned she started volunteering on weekends at a homeless shelter, serving meals quietly without the cameras or the photo ops she used to crave. She sent handwritten letters to people she'd wronged, friends she'd abandoned, colleagues she'd mocked. I didn't get one of those letters, not yet, but I didn't need to. I could see the pattern. She was trying to become someone she herself could respect. The first time I actually saw her after the collapse was almost by accident. I had a meeting downtown, and as I walked past a community center, I spotted her through the glass doors. Sophia was on her knees helping a little boy tie his shoes. No designer gown, no stage smile, no audience to impress. Just my daughter, hair pulled back, jeans faded, a quiet smile as she patted the boy's shoulder. For a moment I saw the little girl she used to be, the one who once looked at me like I was her whole world. I didn't go in. I didn't want to break the moment, but I carried it with me for weeks. Eventually she did call again. Not with excuses, not with desperation, just a quiet voice. Dad, I know I don't deserve to ask you for anything, but could we maybe have dinner sometime? Nothing fancy. Just us. I paused before answering. So much of me wanted to say yes immediately, to run back into her life. But another part of me, the part that remembered her whisper on the terrace, "You embarrass me," reminded me to wait. Respect isn't earned in one action. It's built brick by brick over time. "We'll see, Sophia," I told her. And for the first time, she didn't push back. She just said, "Okay, I'll keep trying." The world had labeled her downfall an inheritance scandal, a revenge story, the ultimate family drama of Beverly Hills. But to me, watching her ride buses, pack lunches, write letters, and scrub floors, it wasn't about scandal anymore. It was about survival. And survival stripped of luxury and ego can shape a person in ways money never will. Sometimes I'd catch myself driving by her neighborhood. I'd see her at the bus stop, hair damp from the morning shower, clutching a coffee in a paper cup. Other times I'd hear her name mentioned at a charity board meeting, that Carter girl she's been putting in the hours. She's not the same person she was. Each time a piece of my anger chipped away. I wasn't ready to forgive her completely, but I was ready to hope. Because in her quiet acts, volunteering without credit, Working without applause, apologizing without fanfare, I began to see something stronger than arrogance. I began to see the Sophia Laura, and I once dreamed she would be. Redemption doesn't come in a speech. It doesn't come in crocodile tears or grand gestures. It comes in the grind of humility, the daily choice to live differently. And slowly, painfully, Sophia was making that choice. That was her apology to me. Not words, but actions. And actions at last were enough to make me believe she might one day earn back what money could never buy my respect. 6 months after the collapse, Sophia called again. This time I said yes. We met at a small diner off Ventura Boulevard. Nothing glamorous, just the kind of place where the smell of coffee lingers, and the waitress calls everyone hon. She was already there when I walked in, sitting in a booth with her hair tied back, no makeup, wearing jeans and a plain sweater. For once, she didn't look like a Beverly Hills socialite. She looked like my daughter. Dinner was quiet at first. She pushed her fork through her salad, searching for words. Finally, she looked up. Dad, I know I can't erase the last 5 years, but I'm trying to live differently now. I want you to see that. I nodded, letting her continue. She told me about her job at the nonprofit, the kids she'd helped apply for scholarships, the hours she spent at the shelter. She didn't brag. She didn't dramatize. She just told the truth. And the truth was enough. When the plates were cleared, I leaned forward. Sophia, I want you to understand something. I love you. I always will. But love isn't the same as acceptance. Respect isn't inherited. It isn't bought. It isn't guaranteed by a last name or a trust fund. Respect is earned one choice at a time. And for years you chose pride over family. That's why you lost everything. If you want it back, not the money but me, you have to keep choosing differently. Tears welled in her eyes, but she didn't argue. She didn't beg. She just nodded. For the first time, I believe she understood. As I walked her to her car, the night air cool against our faces, I realized something important. This story was never about money. It was about worth. Sophia thought she could inherit respect the way she inherited millions. But the truth is, you can inherit money, you can inherit property, but you cannot inherit dignity. That has to be earned. And maybe she was starting to earn it. If you've stayed with me through this family drama, ask yourself what's worth more in your life, money or respect? Drop your answer in the comments right now. If this story struck a chord, save it, share it, or subscribe so you don't miss the next one. Because sometimes the quietest stories, the ones about family respect and choices, are the ones that change us the most.